What's up? We got The Flash, Season 2, Episode 8, The Legends of Today. So this episode starts off at a shipping dock where we see this fisherman bring in this bearded guy with So then the guy kills all the people and he's like, who taught you that? Houdini? He's like, no, I taught. The guy's like, he taught Houdini. So then Houdini didn't teach him, he taught Houdini. So he kills all the guys, and that's when Barry and Patty and Joe investigate it. So then we see Cisco and Kendra on a date, that's when the bearded guy shows up, calling her Priestess Shayara. And he's like, hey, this place is closed. And he's like, you're beautiful now, Priestess Shayara. And she's like, priestess? Because, and she's like, yeah. So then he's about to kill him when Barry shows up, saves Cisco. And he's like, hold up. And he's like, you're stop. And he's like, so is he. But then Cisco reveals Barry's identity to Kendra, and he's like, thanks, Barry. And Barry's like, Cisco. And Kendra's like, wait a minute, you're the Flash, and you work with the Flash? Wow, this is all really confusing. So they mentioned about how the guy said that how they've been friends, how they know each other for ages, but she's only, and he's like, why did you want to move there? And she's like, I guess I felt close to the city, I guess. So he's like, he said Priestess Shayara, and she's like, and he's like, that's Coptic. And she's like, you mean Egyptian? And then Harry's like, that's Coptic. And then Caitlin's like, you mean Egyptian? And he's like, yeah. So then Barry's like, hold up, we gotta get the Green Arrow and Team Arrow on this. And he's like, you wanna go to Star City? And he's like, hey, we can hold up here. And he's like, we deal with metahumans. They deal with the magic. So who better to stop a guy who's after her than with Team Arrow's help? So then we see Damien Dark as it's in the first episode, and he's killing a guy. But then Oliver's like, and he's like, you brought Arrow to a gunfight, and then Oliver's like, what guns? And then Felicity's saying, oh, Oliver, you told me that the match, you said that, oh, Felicity, the match, the magnetic arrow gun trick wouldn't work. And he's like, yeah. And I said it would. And he's like, Felicity, honey, you're kind of talking in my ear. And she's like, oh, I thought this line was only on. I thought this line was off. Continue fighting. So that's when Barry's about, and he's like, and he's about to kill the Green Arrow when Barry shows up, and Felicity and Thea's like, hold up, we know the Flash? I didn't know we knew the Flash. We know the Flash. I'm surprised they didn't feel Thea and Dig vomits, because that's Dig's joke. Every time Barry flashes them in, he pukes. So it's a running joke that they started doing with this episode, I think. So then we see, he's like, hey, you can come to Star City just stop Jamie Dark. And he's like, nah, I came to help a friend. And he's like, hey, you don't wear sleeves. And he's like, don't you get cold? And Barry's like, I spent 5 years I spent half 2 years in the North China Sea. I don't get cold, Barry. Okay, so they explain what's going on with Kendra, and they're like, hey, this guy was. So then Malcolm Merlin shows up to the expedition dump, and then Malcolm Oliver holds a gun to Malcolm, like almost shoots him. But then when Thea's like, it's her dad, and Oliver's just like, wouldn't Barry be like, hey, you're the guy that I saved from the cave? Wouldn't that be it? So they explain Malcolm Merlin's exposition is that he explains that his name is Vino Savage, and he's like immortal. And he's like, you mean a vampire? And he's like, not a vampire. He's immortal. He's like, that explains why he looks like the same as he did in 1975. So, and yeah. So then Kendra gets abducted by Hawkman or Carter Hall, and he's like, hey, he's Prince Khufu, she's Priestess Shiara, and they're an item. But she's like, and he's like, yeah, you just need to emerge, to spread your wings and emerge. But he's like, hold up, I gotta take care of your two friends real quick, and goes to fight the Green Arrow and the Flash. And he's like, what are we supposed to do? And he's like, I don't know. He's like, it's your city, Oliver. That's a line that will come back later in, I think, the next part. But yeah, so they fight, and so they fight, and he gets captured. And he gets captured, and yeah, so he gets captured, and he's like, this is Prince. And they're lovers. So yeah, and he's like, they start out as lovers, and then they die, and then Savage kills them, and every time he kills them, they keep reincarnating 206 times. And he's like, she's like, I don't want to make it 200. He doesn't want to make it 207. So he's like, you only need my help to stop him. And he's like, yeah, watch it. Watch us. So Barry and Oliver. Yeah, we know it's actually this episode. Barry says this. So Barry actually goes over says this. So Barry so she's like, so Carter pushes her, and Barry saves her, and they're like, no, we can stop Savage. You don't need to emerge to do that. So he's like, I know you want. I know you want to be here. So why don't you let Kendra get her wings, and then she can fly you back to Central City. So, yeah. She can fly you back to Central City. So Kendra is like, Carter was right. There's something holding her back. If it's not moving there, or it's her moving to Central City, or it's her, or Cisco, and then so she falls down, and boom, her wings emerge, and she trips on the wings, and he's like, she's gonna have to get used to the wings, and Cisco's like, you'll get used to them, Hawk Girl, and the name is born. Hawk Girl is created. So yeah. So as they're fighting Savage senses it, and he's like, Shiara. So yeah. So yeah. It's a funny scene where Barry actually steals Oliver's toe. Yeah. So Savage showed up prior, and Thea shot him with some arrows. He fell off of it, and then they blew him up again, and he still survives. So yeah, so they fly back to Central City, and then Oliver bumps into a kid, and that kid turns out to be Samantha Clayton'S son, meaning that kid is actually Oliver's son. Yes, Oliver's son has been introduced to the show, and Oliver is kind of shocked, being like, wait a minute, he had a son this entire time, and Samantha Clayton never told him about it because she was paid by his mom, not do anything. So, yeah. So, that was the episode. Yeah. Also, let's talk about the Flash stuff, the Central City stuff, because Caitlin isn't in the adventure. So Caitlin and Harry decide to build a speed drug that will give Barry speed, but they try to test it on Jay, who hasn't been in the episode for 2 episodes, and he's like, hold up, you're not getting the Speed Force isn't something that you can create in a lab. Caitlin, you better not give that to Barry. But then, as well as it's just randomly leaving one night, Patty pivots. Harry's randomly leaving one night. Patty sees him and thinks his Velocity 6 is a junk gun. So what does Patty do? She shoots Harry But Harry survives because he's one of the Welleses, so he can't die. Yeah, so they give him temporary speed, and he pulls the bullet. Yeah, and he's like, hey, you're gonna thank him for saving his life by not using this Velocity 6 on Barry. So that was the episode. It was a good. I really think this. Will the second half of the crossover really live up to the first one? Or will it be a crash and burn second half? We'll have to see that next time on Arrow. But anyway, that's The Flash, and I'll see you next time on more of The Flash.